As I finished watching Robert J Flaherty's exposition through the medium of film, a magnum opus where the experiments through expedition captures what the world saw for the first time through film, was a revolution in many ways in the form of documentary filmmaking. I instantly knew a lot of sequences were obviously staged. However, that did not take away from the experience of the film. In fact, for most often, as disappointing as it may sound, documentaries are staged for cinematic purposes. However, after a bit of reading around, I was exposed to the true backstories that surrounded this seemingly visceral epic. As the film begins, we find out that Flaherty's initial film reels had caught fire, thus had been destroyed, and he had decided to return to the wilderness of Canada once again, where he was reunited with his friend Nanook, who he filmed for nearly a year, constructing a story of his livelihood, love, and life. The documentary is stellar, given the minimalistic landscape of the tundra, but can the snow bury the lies that the film so desperately seems to hide from us? While there is a certain extent of truth in what we see, the film uses multiple lies to contribute to the tale. On one hand, Nanook of the North is a brilliant exposition of the Inuits of Ungava Peninsula in eastern Canada, filled with romanticisms that it so obviously derives from showcasing man in the wild. On the other hand, the film is equally a stage drama of lies that are fed to us to make us believe in what turns out to barely be the truth. In the middle of the beautifully barren landscapes lies a truth that isn't so hard to see, a truth that may very well change your thoughts on the film itself. The purpose of this essay, however, isn't to brainwash you into disliking the film, but rather to understand what truly goes on behind the camera, behind the beauty and glamour of cinema. And Nanook of the North, shot in 1922, is one of the earliest examples of this. If one reads a little bit about the film on the internet, you will be able to access multiple articles already published about how staged the film truly is. From the grand hunting with harpoons scenes to the scene where Nanook's family builds an igloo, a lot indeed has been staged on request of Nanook's dear friend and director of the film, Robert Flaherty. Now, it is no doubt that in spite of this, the scenes do provide an insight into the lives of the Eskimos in Canada. One can feel the cold that the people of Ungava feel, and one can feel the tension when Nanook and his colleagues hunt a nearly 200 kilogram walrus. This is owed to the rawness of the footage itself, which, albeit staged, is limited staging, for a lot depends on flora and fauna in this feature film. As the 4 seasons come and go, we follow Nanook's journey throughout, in a linear timeline. In these 4 seasons, we also see a somewhat symbolism of every season through the 4 hunting sequences in the film: fishing, a fox, a walrus, and a seal. A major sequence in the film is that of building an igloo, which is one of the many stage elements as mentioned before, as usage of the required lighting inside the igloo would lead to the ice melting. However, through this very element, a lot of the film's themes come to life. We see the theme of warmth brought out in several ways, be it through the warmth that an igloo provides amidst the jarring and relentlessly raging climate of the cold desert, or through the warmth that a family share through every hug, every ice sculpted or boot bitten. Nanook's relationship with his children is beautifully heartwarming, although at moments the film seems excessively staged, such as the early scene where a child laughs while consuming castor oil, which is nothing short of a miracle in real life. Another interesting aspect of the film is, of course, the way of the wild. There is a contrasting showcase of animals. While we see Nanook's huskies embody a certain element of warmth and innocence in the film, the other animals are showcased in a somewhat brutal hunting sequences. The way of the wild, man at their most raw, surrounded by the depths of unforgiving nature. While in the film we see Nanook and his men hunt using spears and harpoons, these were methods long given up since the arrival of the gun, which is what they indeed did use to hunt in reality. But once again, for cinematic purposes, this was staged. Survival. Another key theme in the film is depicted through these jarring sequences where desperation gets the better of composure where happy-go-lucky is a convincing lie about the livelihood of the Eskimos, when in reality their lives are riddled with constant search for food as their main means of livelihood. So here's the thing about Robert J Flaherty's film. It was an expedition that was turned into a passionate exploration of the Arctic through the medium of film. However, multiple sequences and often the artificially created situations haunt the film into being the white man's dated understanding of the lives of the Eskimos and their prejudices towards them. As much as there is a cultural insight into the lives of the Inuits, there is something that seems so disturbing about the fact that a lot of what you're seeing is not the actual truth, something you'd seek in a documentary usually. Of all the facts that have been laid out on the table over the years, perhaps the most disturbing one would be that our primary character, Nanook, isn't really even named Nanook. His real name is Alakaryalak, which, just like me, even Flaherty must have found difficult to pronounce and subsequently use in the film, hence the change in name. Nanook, which means polar bear in the Inuit region, was real, yet fictional. So were his two wives, who were in fact Robert J Flaherty's common-law wives. All of this brings me to wonder about a question. A question asked frequently by documentary filmmakers over the ages. A question I will leave for you to answer as an individual. In the world of filmmaking, cinema is ever so often catered to our liking, to our tastes and understanding. But in the process, so much of what is truly true is sucked away from it. So at what point does a documentary film become a fiction? And how authentic does a documentary have to be in order to be non-fictional?